Hello, 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 hello. Are you ready for some podcasting? Welcome to In the Closet with. It's once again Pride Month, and this year I wanted to celebrate with my fellow creatives. Throughout June, the stream will be guested by a variety of people where we talk about the queer experience. Today, however, is a little different. Since it's the last day of Pride, this little project is rounded off by me being the interviewee and my friend Vid, they, them, as the interviewer. Hello?
Hello.
You ready to rumble? Are you ready to take over?
It's me. I'm on the left this time.
You are.
Uh,
It feels weird. When I set this up, I was like, no, wait, this doesn't look right.
You can just imagine my shark there. I have all the questions written on the bicep and just like shark dictation.
Good.
See where we're at in the interview. Kicking things off, despite this is your channel, your show, and all that jazz, why don't you give us a little introduction for yourself?
Oh boy, this is what it feels like being on the other end of this. I'm Jaws, she, they. I am a raging lesbian, an artist, and all cryptid, permanently residing in the VHS. That's why I always go with, because it makes no sense, but it also makes me sound very deep, dark, and mysterious.
I don't know. I feel like that actually does, like, as long as you don't question it too much, it gives such a good, like, breakdown. You hint at the cryptids, you like cryptids and monsters and stuff. You say you're living in an old VHS, you're into the retro aesthetic. I think you do really well with that.
Yeah, it's what I've been using in the zines I've contributed to the last couple of years. It took me a while. Like I remember distinctly in one scene, I think it's like, I like wrestling. Because I am just garbage at introducing myself, because it's just not something I'm comfortable with. But then again, most people aren't, because it puts you on the spotlight. And I think at one point I was like, you know what, instead of, and this is not me calling other people pretentious, because most people are just taking it a little bit more seriously, and that's probably very clever of them, but I'm not a very serious person, especially not regarding how I present, because life is too short, man.
For sure, yeah. It's I spent my undergrad years was at a liberal arts college that had a pretty big art department. I spent a fair amount of time in, and every time the shows came around and people had to make artist statements, you could hear the collective groan of all of these people, which was like, oh no, I have to describe myself. And I think, like, if that's your personality, finding a way to have fun with it also shows your personality.
Yeah, I hope it does. Sadly, as like the last year or so, I feel like cryptid is so similar to crypto that I have thought about changing it out, because I don't want anyone coming to my profile and be like, oh, this bitch into NFTs, nah, cancel. But I've even had the same where I see someone have like NSFW, I read that as NFT, and I'm like, what? And there's like, oh no, oh, it's just porn. Woo.
Yeah. Just the porno, not
the crypto bros.
Oh, that's like, I really, like, the bubble's already burst, but I can't wait for it to just die out so that it can stop being such a force, especially in around these like art communities where it's just like this thing that everybody's just like, oh my god, this again.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of the many things where, and I guess you could call me privileged, where I just
Mhm.
like it's out of my hands, man. Whatever
Yeah.
whatever people do about it, they can do. And I mean, even I have experienced theft with crypto, so I mean, at this point, I feel like all I can do is just take a public stance, which I've done a very limited couple of times, saying that,
Mhm.
hey, I will never do this. If you see my art, it is stolen, and just
Mhm.
please never ever bring the subject to me in terms of like as a business transaction. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that's. But on a much better topic, cryptids. Cryptids great.
Thank you.
Has that been like a long time thing for you?
Honestly, this is gonna out me as such a ding dong, but no, because I've grown up knowing about lore and fairy tales and such
Mhm.
things like ancient uh fictional scary creatures. It's like very deep seated in like Norwegian
Mhm.
culture.
Yeah.
But cryptids, which as far as I understand is modern fairy tale creatures, kind of like
Yeah.
more like not necessarily contemporary, but from like maybe the last 100 to 200 years ish.
Mhm.
So it's much more modern in that sense. And I had never heard of the terminology cryptids until maybe my late 20s. Of course, I'd heard of like the Mothman and Bigfoot and the Jersey Devil and all that stuff. Like, I've heard of them, but I didn't
Yeah.
know there was like a flagship terminology to bind them all together.
Yeah, that I feel like actually cryptid has become such a common term that like cryptozoology, the original terminology has kind of gotten lost. Uh, and like I used to have a bunch of books on cryptozoology, and it is yeah, it's kind of it is more of a modern thing, and especially in the U.S. Like there's a bit of like there's just not as much old culture, and so uh, like newer things kind of like crop up and become this cultural thing. But yeah, places like Norway, you have old folklore.
Mm,
Ton. And I should say, in the U.S., new culture identities is largely a white invention. There are a lot of other ethnicities that have existed in the Americas that have old folklore, and uh, there has to be a bit of work within cryptid stuff to make sure that that doesn't get subsumed. Like, it's just, yeah. Like if you ever hear talk about like wendigos and stuff like
yeah, yeah.
that that is stuff that white people shouldn't be touching, and they
Yeah,
often do.
exactly. I was thinking like, yeah, because you have indigenous people legends,
Hmm.
which, you know, far precedes the white man coming and fucking everything up over in the US. Um
Yeah.
and I adore that kind of stuff, but also just like you said, like I will never ever touch that on like a personal level. Like I will not involve that in my stories because those are not like my legends to pervert as a white
Hmm.
person.
Yeah. You have all sorts of fun legends to pervert. Like your Hela was spectacular.
Thank you.
But maybe we can launch into some actual questions.
Yeah, hit me.
All right. Uh, did you have a bit of queer representation when you were younger that really kind of hit as capital letters a big thing? Like, I know for me, when I was in high school, all of my queer friends got together and we had a rented VHS of Better Than Chocolate that we all watched together. Uh, but yeah, how about you?
Well, this is like a thing that I've touched upon throughout this
Mm.
month. How, if you're like a 80s, 90s kid, representation
Mhm.
was sparse, and that is putting it
Oh, yeah.
lightly. So that's why I also always felt like emphasizing that your representation didn't necessarily have to be queer in itself, but it gave
Mhm.
you an insight into the queerness within yourself.
Hmm.
And for me, that definitely was Ocarina of Time, Zelda Ocarina of Time. Because, like I've also mentioned several times throughout this month, is that I was kind of what I call gender blind. I don't know if that has like a proper term, but I just didn't really understand. Because until a certain point in your life, boys and girls are the same. Like, there's nothing
Yeah.
separating us, unless your parents are, girls can't wear blue and boys can't wear pink, if you have those kind of parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stuff like that, but it's okay that we play together and stuff like that. So I had a friend, a male friend as a kid, who was like maybe I think 2 or 3 years younger than me, and he was what I would just call a very soft boy. He was very in touch with his emotions. He had no issues crying, stuff like this. He was a very, very
Mhm.
tender boy, and we played Ocarina of Time together, and I have such a vivid memory of a scene early in game where your Link, your young Link, you have snuck into the courtyard of Hyrule Castle to talk with the Princess Zelda,
Mhm.
and she is peeping on a meeting between her dad, the king, and the Prince of Thieves, Ganondorf, because he is there to make some sort of deal, and you get to see through the window Ganondorf marching up, kneeling down, and then suddenly he stares right at you, the player, because he catches you in the window.
Mm.
And I was like, just floored by how handsome I found him, which is very
Mhm.
funny because when you know Nintendo 64 graphics, it's like, we were not picky back then. We used a lot of
Oh.
imagination.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember I was like, oh my god, he's so hot, he's so cool. And my friend, he was like, yeah, 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 he's so hot, he's so cool. And
Mm.
like, there was nothing weird about that. And as far as I know, because we're not in like we're not in touch anymore, but as far as I know,
Mm.
he is a straight guy.
Mm.
And we would do the same with like the Gerudos or Impa, like Zelda's bodyguard, where we
Mhm.
went like, "Oh my god, she's so fucking hot, or they're so hot." Like, we were thirsty
Yeah.
kids, like, you know how kids are. They're not very like
Yeah. Yeah.
developed in their praising of admiration.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that is like such a fun memory for me of how natural that felt, and there was no shaming and no joke making between us for just like openly thirsting on same gendered characters.
Mhm. Yeah. I think there's like that in itself is nice to be able to like bond in that way with like other young queer folk, and I it kind of like it makes me wonder if there's something to like, although like you are a lesbian, but then like seeing Ganondorf being like just strongly reacting that way, I feel like there is a way that queer attraction happens that doesn't really regard gender. There's just like there's something there that is itself very queer that is happening with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, absolutely. And for me, and this has taken years to examine and understand, and also something I feel like I mentioned many times by now, but the fact that when I saw male characters or male presenting characters as a kid and I thought I
Mhm.
had to be straight, um I thought it was like a fascination in like a sexual attraction kind of thing.
Mhm.
But now as an adult, I'm like, it's the kind of energy that I want to give off to other people. And
Mhm.
it's something that I come across quite often if women or female presenting people have too much, either they come off as confident or
Mhm.
self assured or calm, like they're not ditzy and cute and innocent, which I can't be, accused of being any of those things. Um, then you're also perceived as a threat. because for some reason
Mm.
your vagina turns incredibly fucking terrifying if you come off as a little bit confident. Um, so as an adult, I am able to recognize that when I saw Ganondorf, I was like, that's the kind of fucking attitude that I want. Like when I turn and roughly stare at people, I want them to go like, whoo, oh my, whew, clutching my pearls, but also fanning my face.
Yeah, no, that is good, and I think I think the adult response is able to appreciate that confidence, and so like if there are people that we don't perceive as authoritative that can act authoritative and enjoying that confidence in them, I think that's an adult reaction.
Mm.
And if you're having the opposite, it's pretty immature.
Yeah, to me, it always speaks levels of just how um, narrow your worldview is if a confident woman terrifies you.
Hmm.
And it's also funny because confidence is so complex because, like, you're my friend, you know me. On a private level, I have zero confidence. I'm incredibly, like, unhealthily self critical. It's just that I've learned to mask because there's and this is not to throw other people under the bus because we can't help who we are and how we are in many regards, but there is something, at least to me, unattractive about people who constantly put themselves down.
Hmm.
And I don't even mean like in a sexual attraction, but like just a feeling of safety.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I had to learn that the hard way that you push people away if you publicly announce all the time just how fucking much you hate yourself, because that is just not
Hmm.
something people gravitate towards. So when I come off as confident, that's just because that's how I wish to be perceived by the general public. And then I can just be very open and raw about the fact that no, I have a lot of mental health struggles and my own inner demons, but they're for me to figure out and tackle and try to wrangle, and then I will talk about them with people that I trust and feel comfortable
Hmm.
with. And for the rest, I will just look like a mean motherfucker that you will leave alone because that suits me just fine.
Yeah, that works out. Oh, um, move on ahead because we have quite a few questions. Uh, so, uh, we're often asked about how our queerness and our identity can affect our art and our vision, but is there a way that being an artist has affected your queerness?
Yeah, for sure. Because to me, first off, they're inseparable. Like it's
Mm.
all part of me. So one wouldn't be without the other. But on like a more concentrated scale, um, because we talked about throughout this month about like the performative side of being queer. Like a lot of people feel like fake or like they're not like pulling their weight or whatever because they're not constantly screaming, I'm this or I'm that and I'm so fucking
Mm.
visible, which is silly because it shouldn't be like that. But it's also like so many people have brought up that like you come out so many times because we live in a heteronormative society, so people will always
Mhm.
assume that you're straight until proven otherwise.
Yeah.
And for me, art gave me that platform to publicly display my preferences and my identity and my beliefs and my values.
Mhm.
And if I wasn't an artist, I honestly would just not be me because I believe that my creativity is so incredibly intertwined with being queer. And I
Mhm.
think, like, as been proven over and over again, a lot of queer people are creatives and a lot of creatives are queer. It's just like it's a running theme that we seem unable to escape.
Yeah.
So yeah, like maybe in an alternate timeline where I'm just not an artist, I'm also straight. Who knows? What a dreadful
Or
timeline.
and maybe not straight, but maybe just like more repressed and like, yeah. like we talk about uh, creative outlets as exactly that, of these outlets for things that we have on the inside, but like, yeah, putting it that way, it kind of it feeds itself and it becomes a cycle of like showing who I am, and then I become who I am, and showing who I am. And yeah.
Yeah, like in a weird way, I'm not saying that I faked it till I made it until I became queer, because I've obviously always been queer. It just took me
Yeah.
way too long to realize, but
Mhm.
it is definitely, it is my platform. It is how I choose to announce my preferences, and not, again, not necessarily in like a pure sexual context, because that's also, I think
Mhm.
that's an easy mistake to make, especially if you ever make stuff like not safe for work. It's easy for people to assume, oh, that's her kinks, that's what, rubs her the right way or
Mhm.
whatever. But that's not it at all. It's more just creating a platform for me to express my views, and then hopefully connecting with more people out there feeling the same, and also hopefully creating a space where more people feel seen and accepted.
Yeah. No, like your work spreads all sorts of like bleh.
Wow.
Words.
Wow, is that how people feel?
No, no. I lose words. Uh, no, your work is kind of all all over the place in a good way. Of like, sure you do some not safe for work stuff and some like very explicitly queer stuff, but also just like smaller works. I in my mind I'm picturing a much older work of yours of Taylor and Fortuna that they're standing on a hill and just like looking out at a cloudscape, um, and just like the way that that kind of shows a part of you of this like this romantic queerness and this view of the world that is like very distinctly you.
Yeah, I guess that's a very, very nice, sophisticated way of viewing it. I wish I actively thought like I was that analytical with my work, because if I were, I would probably reach further, because then I could be a little more cynical and a little less touchy feely with everything, which is such like a hard line to walk when you're creative.
Mhm.
Because I really wish I could only make stuff that resonated with everyone, including myself. But yeah, that is something I'm still very much like struggling figuring out.
Yeah, it's uh, art. ugh, art analysis is incredibly challenging, uh, and like cracking that sort of like talking to everyone, or even just like talking to a moment with an art piece. You know, I'm I'm a small time hobbyist, and so I've never really tried to be like I'm saying this with this. I'm usually like, look at my little person. I made a little guy. Please enjoy.
Yeah, but that's kind of how I feel too. I'm like, I drew this smile, and then I like just slap it on Twitter. I'm like, why is this tanking so fucking hard? Okay, I guess I suck. Smile, and then like rinse repeat of that evil cycle.
Uh, it's and not all art has to say a thing. Like there's a long history of genre illustrators that have come before the modern age, and even some of what we consider the 20th century masters were commercial artists. They
Yeah.
they made stuff that's very pretty, and it was explicitly used to sell things. So you know, art gets made.
Yeah, I think that's also like something I'm hyper aware about, because my mother sold me no lies about how difficult it is being an artist, and she would always say, and it sounds so harsh when I repeat it, but it's also a little bit is lost in language. but
Yeah.
she was basically TLDR, you will die and no one will know who you are. And that is very true because art as contemporary is very challenging because knowing what to hit in the current moment is incredibly cynical.
Mhm.
And if you're like me, and I don't mean cynical as a negative thing here, it's just then you are very good at calculating and analyzing what it is that you do. And I am simply not because I'm very much like like this sounds so hokey, but I'm very much like a from the heart kind of person. And if I don't feel it, I'm just not
Mhm.
gonna do it. And I can't treat art like math, like just this
Yeah.
calculative thing that has to like go up and up.
Yeah, and like I think there's I I like your mom's advice actually because it points to something that is not thought about a lot, where society has really pushed this idea of the famous artist
Mm.
a lot, and you think about almost any other profession that somebody could go into, and you don't need to tell a young person about it. It says, "I want to be an accountant when you grow up." Their mom doesn't have to tell them, "You're not going to be like famous accountant, JP numbers."
Mm.
Like you're going to die in obscurity, my little accountant. Um, and it's like, well, yeah, fucking like the vast majority of people do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And in that regard, I am very glad that my mother sold me no lies because
Mhm,
I have met people who have been cushioned way too softly by their
mhm,
environment, and then reality came knocking, and they because what I'm of course generalizing, but a thing that can easily happen is that you become complacent and lazy, so you don't push
mhm,
yourself to your new limits. And I'm not saying that you have to, maybe you don't have to scrutinize and be super mean to yourself every single day. There's a much more healthy balance, but I would any day of the week be this cynical towards myself and always demand the best. And if I don't do the best, then like break down over it, learn from it, and move on. Than to be way too lax and like, oh yeah, this is fine. This is so good. Everyone is gonna love this. And then like reality slaps you in the face like a sledgehammer. It's like, no, because you're not that good.
yeah, yeah. No, there's hard lessons to be learned in
Yeah,
in creative spaces.
absolutely. And I've seen that firsthand because I've studied with people like that. And this is not
Mm,
to say that I think poorly of people who are content, because I think there's a difference between being like content and grateful for where you are and just like, this is fine. This is what I need. I don't need
mhm.
more. I don't need better. Like this makes me happy. But there's a big difference between that for me and being overly confident when you don't necessarily got something to show for it.
Yeah, yeah. That's hmm. So interviewers aren't supposed to like sit and internalize a thing. Like, you've taught me a lesson here. Hang on. But speaking of uh, your own art and even like some recent pieces with the Pride editions, we've all seen the wonderful art that you make of Logan and Venom together. Do you have any other like kind of unexpected queer ships floating around?
I was thinking about this. I was thinking real hard. I'm gonna be honest. Um and I think I said something like, I mean, if it exists, I ship it. I'm a hopeless
Right.
romantic, and um, you know, I I love romance, and I love finding stuff that isn't there. I am that annoying bitch that's like, are they into one another? And then other people are like, no, they're just friends. Can you stop being like a creepoid?
Hmm.
But I do know that as a teen, I I was very, very much like the cliche girl who loved shipping straight men because,
Mhm.
and of course I didn't realize this as a teenager because I do not claim to be like incredibly fucking schmert, but as an adult I can see that that made them less intimidating because then they were interested in one
Yeah.
another and not in me.
Mhm.
And um I think weirdly enough it was also part of underlying um some misogyny in me as well,
Mhm.
where I would gladly ship men, but fuck now would I ship women. Like I would
Right.
never ship women with one another because lesbians were awful and I did not want to be associated with that.
Mhm.
Um so I can't really give you anything specific as of today because I'm also very fleeting, which is probably like some
Yeah.
neurodivergent thing where I hyper focus on something for a while and then I move on. Like I'm fine. Um and if I'm gonna double down and work on something, it has to be beneficial for me. Like for example,
Yeah.
making witchcraft or something where I earn so, and not necessarily monetary, but it earns me something at the end of the day. And shipping the latest hottest characters isn't necessarily that for me. So me doing the Logan and Venom thing is peak me because it's so weird and obscure, and like I've had so many people comment like, man, this is a ship I didn't know I needed, but I'm here for it because clearly I'm touching some like more obscure ground than, I don't know,
Mhm.
more typical ships.
Yeah. No, and like there's something in that with like of these out of character ships where like you love the character, you don't always love the way that they're written or personified or whatever in
Mm,
whatever media that they're popping up in, and to be able to like take that and be like, I'm going to take all the pieces that I really like about this character, and I'm going to put it into something that I really enjoy. And I think there's a lot of joy to be found in that, you know?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because I personally have never either been into either consuming or creating fanfic. Like that's,
Hmm.
and I have nothing but respect for the people who do. It's just like writing isn't my passion.
Yeah.
Uh, and in my later years, fan art is also something I've grown a little jaded towards in terms of how it works on social media because
Hmm.
it tends to attract an audience that then they're only there for that, which that's fine. That's
Yeah.
kind of like
Yeah.
if you're a McDonald's, people don't come for like your flaming ass hot ribs, they come for shitty burger. Like sorry McDonald's,
Yeah.
you're never going to sponsor me anyway, so I can say that. um and it's kind of the same with like fan artists. If you're discovered, like if your art that's blowing up is fan art, people are like, ooh, bleep bleep bleep, like that's what I'm here for. And then they
Hmm.
find your profile is like 90% OC stuff or obscure characters that they've never like encountered. It's like, okay, well, bye Felicia, this is not what I'm here for.
Hmm.
So I now when I do fan art, it has to be once again 100% from the heart, and that's why it is like weird ass niche stuff like Venom and Logan because
Yeah.
that's where my heart is at the moment. And I
Yeah.
don't do it for other people to go like, man, I love this. I do it for me and making my inner 14-year-old very, very happy.
Yeah. No, that's a good space to. Yeah. Yeah, and like there is something about like getting hung up in that fan artist space, and I, I hope that we're moving away from that, but I think I'm just getting older is actually what I'm seeing. Uh, but yeah, like there's so many artists, yourself included, that I found through fan art, and then you have like created your own works that are just ah, people's own works are such like passion projects and so much more wonderful than you know these things that they're creating off the back of something else.
Mm.
Like I've even seen a few artists who have taken works where like it started out as a fan creation and they've gone so far into AU that it's just like I should just have an OC, shouldn't I?
Yeah. I
and
mean,
and they
I've
go
done
on and
that
they create
myself.
something they create something really great with it. Oh yeah, of course.
I
Theo and
drew,
Will.
yeah, I drew female Ganondorf and Zelda, and I was like, man, these are some stellar as fucking designs if I do say so myself. I'm just gonna whoop whoop whoop, and then it's mine. But I think the big thing there is being very honest about that, because I think today, if you
Mhm,
look at, especially, I would say both of them, because my style is so different than the Zelda art style, that you
mhm.
wouldn't necessarily draw a clear through line and be like, oh yeah, I can see that this is just gender bent and lesbian Zelda characters. But
You
I,
have definitely pushed that out.
yeah, but even if people were like, is this supposed to be like Ganondorf? I think it's very important to not be offended by that, because then you just come off looking
Mm,
incredibly like pretentious in a way. So
yeah.
I'm always very honest about my influences and even my routes of where I ended up in terms like my
Mhm,
creative process. And I really wish that is something more creatives would just do, because it really does ease up a lot of shame, because I think that's why people react so aggressively and defensively and negatively, is because
mhm.
they feel caught.
Right.
And instead of being embarrassed, just fucking own it. Just be like, yeah, this is my Mary Sue self-insert in Twilight or whatever. Like
Yeah.
just just be honest about it, because if you're, and this is not me saying that I'm so fucking good, but if you are good enough, you are able to make it your own thing and remove at least copyright infringements and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, like, uh, yeah, be proud of what you're doing for sure.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh. Well, it's June 30th. We have hit the end of Pride Month. So, uh, do you have a pride and joy about being queer? Something that's just like the best part of being queer for you?
This was also a tricky question to give like a truthful answer to, because it's it's one of the kind of like landscapes where it's once again easy to become a little performative, I think.
Mhm.
And where it's like, I'm here, I'm queer, and like stuff like that. I'm not shitting on people
Yeah.
who do that. That was really shitty of me to make a voice, because I'm nothing against people who have that attitude. That's like a-okay, but that's just not me.
Mhm.
um but in terms of just like joys about being queer is, I guess I can answer it in a way that realizing that I was a queer person gave me a sense of peace, and in terms joy, I guess
Mhm.
contentment, I guess is better, a better phrasing, because I mean I am a very uh doom and gloom kind of person, so saying that I have like abundance of joy in me would be like a big fat lie, because I am at the best of days content, very rarely happy.
Fair, fair, fair. Yeah.
But it's something that in all my heart-shattering insecurity that I am secure about. Like I know that I'm
Mhm.
queer, and that
Mhm.
together with being an artist are two things that I am 100% sure about, which is a beacon when you're insecure about positively everything else in your life.
Yeah. No, that's sorry, it's sitting with weight of that. But yeah, having that the security of the identity and like we can have conversations about like identities and labels and everything as much as we want, but the reality is like finding things you know about yourself that are some core value that you have uh, really does it sets some things at ease, you know.
Mm.
um,
for me, it made me kinder because I was definitely
Mm,
one of those people who were ravaged by self-hatred, like
mhm,
in terms of like, I know that word is like overused by now, but like internalized misogyny and a lot of stuff that society put upon me and expected out of me. And I was like, I felt very cornered in a way where like I just, and being also a notorious people pleaser, which I am, I was like, I
yeah,
can't give you what you want. So I guess there's,
yeah,
at the end of the day, there's something fundamentally wrong about me, and I'm gonna disappoint you, and it's gonna suck. And it built a lot of anger and resentment in me. And before I became much more balanced and aware, like especially self aware, I could articulate that in very unfortunate ways and let it affect people around me and stuff. But
mhm,
today, I know for sure that I'm way better at just like, even with, for example, my partner, like today I'm having, like, in our current time right now, I'm having a rough day because my life is filled with a lot of change. And
mhm,
I told my partner that I'm having a shit day and I think this is why. And then we talked back and forth about it. And at no point did I try to make her feel bad about that or make her feel like the victim or the target of it, if that makes sense.
mhm.
But 25-year-old me would just been uh like a growth of rage and like giving zero fucks about how that comes across to other people. So it's been personality altering for me to embrace and discover my queerness because it made me let go a lot of disillusions.
Yeah, I think there's been a fair amount of discussion of that over this month of just like we face a lot of hardships and it takes a while to learn how to contend with that. Um, like I had some similar experiences of in my 20s just like being mad and making that everyone else's problem.
Mm,
Um, and I like from what I see and experience of you out in the world is you have been able to come around to be like, we're all mad and sad and uh like let's try and do a little something about that. Or like let's at least like share our feelings on that and like lessen some burdens for everyone. And I do see the good that that has caused in you.
yeah, you're familiar with the meme of Hayao Miyazaki versus Junji Ito, right? Like, Hayao
Hmm.
Miyazaki is this, like, he creates like beautiful, super uplifting, incredibly relatable stories, and he is like such a cynic and so depressed and so fucking over planet Earth. And then you have
Yeah.
Junji Ito who makes like these incredibly fucked up stories that are so grim, and he's just like la 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 living his best life. I, not
I,
to compare myself with Hayao Miyazaki because I'm definitely not that, but I am definitely that kind of person who, like, I do my best to have a very positive output in the world
mhm.
in terms of what I create, like the content I share. I try to make my work more often not very happy and very bright and very sweet. And
Mhm.
then me as a person is like, oh, everything sucks.
It's yeah. We both are and aren't our art.
Yeah, that is very true.
Oh, wow. Speaking of the content that you make, you create a lot of very like compelling queer relationships with your various characters and in like comics and illustration and stuff. Uh, what made for such like a broad representation of the people in the often just like sapphic stories that you're creating?
I think I have the not to be one of those people who's like, oh, I'm 30 now, so I have the wisdom of being 80. But I do definitely have the luxury of being at least not in my early 20s anymore. So I have
Hmm.
a little bit of a broader perspective. And I think most of all, I know how little I know. So I'm not trying to show how incredibly smart I am all the time. Like I'm not trying to prove anything anymore.
Hmm.
And instead, I'm trying to focus on the very little that I can do, which is trying to create a representation that was sorely lacking for me growing up, especially in how uh, women or female presenting characters are being perceived,
Hmm.
and how and this is a very tricky landscape to navigate for me, because I know there are people out there with similar views to me who are turfs in terms of like only women can be like this and blah blah blah. And that's why I always try to emphasize that also female presenting, because I
Hmm.
really fucking hope nobody genuinely believes I'm a turf.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just want women of all sorts of backgrounds to feel validated, that, and not necessarily because I obviously don't always draw all kinds of women, but more in terms of
Mm.
just seeing that how different we can be and that there's beauty in that difference. And I
Hmm.
am of course drawing the stuff that I find beautiful, which is like unnaturally big women that would like they would be so jacked up on roids IRL, like they obviously don't exist. But I mean that's also the luxury you have when you're a stylized artist like I am. You can do that stuff.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, it is both embracing good stereotypes and also trying to break harmful ones, I guess, in terms of I know a lot of people have this unhealthy misconception that you need to have like gendered labels in a relationship, even if you're like, for
Mm.
example, two women or two men. Like it's the typical throwaway comment, like, oh, so who's the man or who's the top or who's the bottom? It's so
Right.
weird. Like, why are you so deeply invested in my sexual life, dude? Like, holy shit, read a book or something. But
Hmm.
for me, it's definitely showing that you can be incredibly tough looking or big and buff or whatever. You can be what people generally categorize as uh, more masculine leaning or just dangerous looking or whatever, however you want to phrase
Hmm.
it. Not like
Yeah,
cute,
yeah.
soft, and conventionally feminine, but you can have all those attributes still, and that is wonderful. You can be a giant teddy bear.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the number one driving force for me, and for me that is a genuine drive because I try to be hyper aware of like fake wokeness because I know there's so much
Mm.
more I could do, but it would be disingenuous.
Mm. Well, I think also you bring a lot of like you bring a lot of different personalities to these women
Mm.
of like something that I've really enjoyed in your works is that you actually are quite good at creating conflicts that happen like through personality. You have like Will and Theo that that like butt heads genuinely, but they are still like deeply in love, and you have like B's story arc is she is absolutely a pain in the ass, but like you love her and you love like seeing the relationship that she has with her wife and watching her learn things. You're very good at creating these characters who have inherent flaws and working those in a story.
Thank you. I
And
think
I think that's something you don't always get from female or even queer characters.
yeah, I think for me that comes from a lot of introspection. Like I am
Mm.
hyper aware that I am not perfect, and I am a very difficult human being, both to be a friend with and especially be a partner with, because I'm what a lot of people would categorize a bitch if they didn't know me better, because I am very blunt.
Mm.
I can be crass. I have very high expectations for a lot of things that may seem unreasonable until you get to know me better.
Mhm.
I am a complex human being, and I think that's the thing we all are. And society is so fucking gung ho about shoehorning us into all being people pleasers and just always going
Yeah.
along with things and being nice and being kind and never ever exposing quote unquote bad sides. And one of my bigger passions is to show that you can change if you're given the room to improve. And for me, like, thank goodness I'm not like a huge public figure and I've never had to like deal with being openly going through my process of becoming a better human being, because it's not like
Hmm.
whenever I say this, people are like, oh my god, did she used to be like a bully or a racist or something? It's not that. It's just that I'm very also mean to myself again. But I used to be a shitty person in terms like I was incredibly judgmental and I lacked a lot of compassion and understanding, and I was impatient.
Hmm.
And I'm very glad that I never had to go through that filthy ass journey publicly, because I luckily had the room to do that very privately and just tell myself to get my shit together. Um,
Yeah.
but even so, there's been people where they have been my friends through like thick and thin, and when I came out the other side, I would contact some of those people and be like, hey, I just want you to know that I really appreciate that you stuck by me even when I was being a little cunt. Like, I see that I was difficult and challenging. And I just want you to know that I see that now as an adult and I super appreciate it. And I think that's why we're still friends, because one of my absolute best friends who I'm finally getting to see again very soon, she is like, I don't understand how she remained my friend. Because we made a bachelor degree together, and I can tell you, I'm a nightmare to work with. I'm not fun. I am very, or I would probably do a little better today, but back then I was incredibly inconsiderate. And the fact that she didn't just like flip me to middle finger and tell me to go fuck myself like most people should have done is very, very remarkable.
No, that is real, and like that level of introspection and self-knowledge is healthy and useful.
Yeah.
But like I, I think your friend, and I think probably you too have like given those chances to people who you can see uh, you know a little bit of the person that they will be. Uh, that there's something there, and we're all growing. Like, I don't think any of us were at our best when we were doing our bachelor's degrees.
No, and like there is something to be said about the fact that I am incredibly self-critical, and you will always remember your worst days and your worst sides, and other people will
Hmm.
remember those differently. And me
Yeah.
being so unforgiving to myself definitely weighs in on that, because I know that if my friend is to listen to this, she's like, "Oh my god, you're such a pancake! Like you're exaggerating so much." um, so of course there is something to that, but to bring it back to like the initial question, I know that that's why I am very focused on that kind of very micro-personal relationship thing, because I know how important it was for me to grow. And
Hmm.
I think it is hard for a lot of people to understand that you can turn out pretty okay in terms like at least how you treat other people and how
Yeah.
you show respect, and you can have been like quite difficult to deal with at some point in your life.
Yeah.
Like you're not
It's,
evil just because you're bad.
yeah. That is a good stance. Yeah. I'm catching myself again, like sitting here thinking on your words of wisdom. Like,
Should I go into philosophy? Should it be one of
I
those
mean,
artsy
d-
fartsy?
I mean, it has been a long interest of yours, right? Philosophy.
I love philosophy. I am one of those people who people go like, "Oh, grown, you're so fucking lame." You're like the 1% who genuinely understood philosophy, and not like, I'm not gonna sit here and be like when I was like 2021 that I understood everything, but I understood
Mhm.
the concept of broadening your horizon. And I've said it so many times that I would not remotely be the person I am today if I didn't have philosophy, because it took my head out of my own ass and put it like on top of the Eiffel Tower or something in terms of perspective, and like, man, we can really arrive at the same conclusion in a billion different ways.
Yeah, no, it's when I was an undergrad, we had this very like liberal arts sort of education. We had these classes called World Thought.
Mm.
That it was a way of sneaking in political science, philosophy, and a little bit of history. Um, and we read a little bit of like Camus and stuff like that. But I wish I had had a much broader philosophical education, because this is like, I'm such a dork, but genuinely, when I look at my favorite dungeon masters out
Mm-hmm.
there, a unifying thing of the way that they think is like, oh, these motherfuckers have studied a lot of philosophy. It's like, they've read a lot of books that I've never cracked the spine of.
But
And so there's a part of me that like wants that for my storytelling so much.
yeah, but there really is something to that though, because I know philosophy for me, even though I was still quite young when I did it,
Hmm.
it still hit me in my formative years, and for some reason, despite being like such a stubborn hoe, I embraced it. I was like, you know what? I'm taking this half year course. I'm just gonna wrap up my sleeves and just go all in. I'm gonna be that dweeb who like raised my hand to every single question. I could feel other students in the classroom like, oh, this bitch. When I would go into lengthy conversations with my teacher, because I loved her. She was quintessential philosophy teacher with like flowy clothing, long blonde straight hair, super hippy dippy. Even when she disagreed with someone, she had like a very nice way of phrasing that. Like if she,
Hmm.
it's impossible to not hit upon incredibly problematic philosophers when you're going through the list throughout the years, because there's also no denying that a lot of them have been white men.
Yes.
So there's a lot of like, yikes, that aged like milk. But it's still interesting when you take it in like both current context, but also like in the time it came out.
Hmm.
And she just had a very beautiful way of like handling that, even when you could tell that she was like, oh, this motherfucker.
That is a skill
It
to
really is.
diplomatically be like,
Yeah, yeah. And that is something I aspire to. Like, I want to arrive at that peacefulness one day where I can like address people where my initial thought is like, oh, you cocksucker, but instead I'm just like, oh, that's, we just don't agree.
yeah, yeah. Oh, one day.
Yeah, one day, hopefully.
Well, switching gears entirely. Uh, you know, we're well out of our bachelor degrees now, but at this point in your life, do you have an idea that would be your ideal Pride celebration?
Yeah, if money wasn't an issue and distance
Hmm.
wasn't an issue, like in the perfect world where most of my friends actually doesn't live like all around the freaking planet and stuff like that, and I wasn't a dirt poor artist prostituting my soul to get anywhere, um, I would love to participate in the Pride Parade itself, just because that's something I've never been able to do. Like, even before I came out as fully queer, I
Hmm.
always wanted to just participate in Pride, because I've uh, that's always been like a subject that's near and dear to me.
Hmm.
Um, but I've just never gotten the chance because the bigger ones are in Oslo, and I don't live in Oslo. Um,
Yeah.
So I would love to be able to do that, because they tend to be relatively early in the day, like they're not at late in the evening.
Mm.
So I would love to go there with all my peeps, and then in the perfect world where being an artist is like being a doctor, you earn the fat dough. I would own a house with a beautiful little garden, and in that garden I would host a barbecue party with all my friends, and we would just eat and drink and have like a wonderful time until the late hours, and maybe play like board games or like D&D or
Mm.
something, and just like nerd out and a found family kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that is, part of the very core of Pride is
Mm.
like, you know, finding your numbers and your community and bringing together and, seeing like, oh, this is us. This
Yeah,
is, yeah,
yeah. You don't have to put on a mask. No, nothing.
yeah. Um, and I know how you feel about barbecue in summer. So,
Oh, it's like I almost get emotional just think about the smell of barbecue because it's so ingrained in me, which is weird because my parents are not barbecuers. They hate
mm,
barbecuing because they're quite shit at it. Sorry, mom and dad. And this is not like my words, it's their words. Like they
yeah.
just don't enjoy the whole process of barbecuing. It's like it takes a long time and it's just a lot of preparations for at least in their opinion like minimal result. So I didn't grow up with barbecuing, and I think maybe it's left a hole in my food loving heart that I just really want to stuff my face with grilled corn and ribs and oh.
Mhm. No, yeah. I did grow up with a mom that absolutely loved a charcoal grill.
Mm,
And so yeah, that's strong summer memories.
oh, it just smells so good. Like if I could get
Yeah.
that smell like concentrated in a little box that I could just whip open on days that I feel like shit, I think like it would cure my depression.
Just like a little incense stick.
Oh, what? Can you imagine someone coming to your apartment like, man, have you been barbecuing? Oh no, that's my incense.
Yeah.
You're like, okay.
It's my oil infuser.
It's my scented candle.
Somebody out there has made that scented candle. I just know it.
Yeah, but you also know how scented candles never nail the smell. Like it's always
Hmm.
artificial, no matter how non-artificial they claim it has been processed or
Yeah.
whatever. It just never smells like the real deal.
No. Yeah. It's scented candle that's like, it smells like leather. It's like, yeah, I mean, sure.
Yeah, I mean, if
It also
if
smells like a candle.
yeah, if you clog both nostrils and try really hard, I'm sure it smells like the litter.
Oh, wow. Um, Moving forward, did you have any queer role models when you were younger? And like, do you have a way that you would want to like thank them now?
Oh boy, this was another one that I had to think real hard about because, as previously mentioned, like that representation just wasn't necessarily there.
Yeah.
And it was funny talking with Louise yesterday about the gladiators because that is
Mm.
like unlocked the core memory in me. Where I was like, yeah, dang the gladiators, dude. But I don't necessarily
Mm.
know that I would like go up and be like, you know what, Zeke and Electra and Atlas. I'm so grateful for the representation because these were their names. Uh,
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for what you did for like 10, 11-year-old me. Uh,
Mm.
but I landed on the creator of Moomin, Tove Jansson,
Hmm.
because I of course didn't know this as a kid because that's probably also something they now where you're in at least in many places of the world allowed to be openly queer. They are
Hmm.
celebrating the fact that she was in an open relationship with a woman.
Yeah.
Uh, as in like openly queer. I have no idea if they were like an open pair.
Hmm.
um, and that's something that now in my later years I'm really loving, like that even the foundation of movement, because Tove Jansson is sadly like long since passed. I think she passed in the 90s. So I wouldn't be able to thank her, but the foundation left behind of her legacy is very celebratory of her queerness, which is wonderful.
Hmm.
because I didn't realize this as a child, but just seeing how like Moomin and Snufkin interacted. I know a lot of people be like, "Oh, stuff making like just men being friends, being gay," but it's also hard to not read it as at least queer coded. And
Mhm.
I know there's a character. I sadly don't know her English name, but her name is Tutiki in Scan or at least
Mhm.
Norwegian. And I'm tempted to say she was based on Tove's partner.
Yeah, yeah.
And she, as a kid, I first thought it was a boy because she looks like a male character, but because she has, the short hair and the male clothing and everything, she wasn't like gendered by her appearance in terms
Mhm.
of like a feminine way. And then when I heard the character say she and her, I was like, oh wow, oh okay, so she's a lady. That's cool because she was also very like independent and tough and wise. She was a very like cool character.
Mhm.
And just in the way that a lot of the characters interact with one another, some of it is, especially if you look at like the 90s animation that I grew up with, there's stuff there where you're like, "Ugh," like that wouldn't be the way it is today. Like Snork Maiden is constantly bitching about being fat and stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is such
Mhm.
a product of its time.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
know it's been recently remade by another studio in 3D, and I think it's safe to say that Snork Maiden is not complaining about her weight in that show because of how we
Yeah.
present values for kids today.
Mhm.
But there was just something inherently safe about the Moomin Valley. Like everything felt legal there and safe and accepting and
Mhm.
peaceful, even when there was conflict, which there was surprisingly much conflict in the Moomin Valley. And I will never forget when humans came and took the Moomins to a zoo because they thought they were animals, and I was like, oh, that shattered my worldview for a while because I didn't realize there were humans in this universe.
Yeah, yeah.
But
That's wild.
yeah, it is. But other than that, like when it was peaceful, it was like a Ghibli movie.
Yeah. Oh, that's I didn't really get exposed to Moomins until I was, like, well into my 20s.
Mm,
Um, because it is, I think it's a Scandinavian and European property and then made its way to Japan weirdly. Uh, well, not so weirdly, but anyways. But, like, America didn't see a lot of it for a very long time,
mm,
uh, even to the point where I don't even know if they, like, Americanized the names. I think Tutiki is that character's name. At least that's how I have, like, read it in the material that I've come across. But I do love for all of these, like, Scandinavian and European kids that, like, that got to be kind of your peanuts, more or less. Like, this
yeah,
thing that you grew up and it existed long before you did, but it's still just, like, this beloved property, and then to discover the creator and how she is, kind of one of our predecessors
mm,
in this, like, long line of queer people is just, it's very cool to me.
yeah. It is really really neat to discover that, and she had such a fascinating life herself, and she was just like a
Mhm.
bona fide badass.
Yeah.
So I really aspire to be that kind of cool lady later in
Mhm.
life.
Yeah. Let's all get our island that we can go make art with on our partners. Or on our
Oh.
partners? With our partners.
Well, not to make it weirdly
You know.
sexual about my childhood idol, but but yeah, let's all swim in the ocean wearing a beautiful flower crown.
Mhm. Sounds perfect. Well, uh, we have arrived at the last question.
Hmm.
It's not as much of a feeling jerker as yours, but
Which is fine. I'm emotionally raw today, so
yeah, that's fun. But is there queer content outside of your comics and your illustrations that you would love to create?
yes, podcasting.
Your
Having
other love, yes.
yeah, I'm a podaholic. Like I am purely addicted to podcasts, and I have been, not to be one of those like way before it was popular, but I definitely did pick it up before it became very mainstream.
Mm.
So it is an older love of mine. And I think it's safe to say that it's even shaped my English because consuming so much oral English has broadened my vocabulary significantly.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, I would love to be able to create podcasts, especially with someone, because getting to test it this month in like a very plebeian format of inviting people that I would love to know more about and I would love to give them the platform to expose themselves more,
Mhm.
has been, it's been a little life changing without sounding too dramatic, because I went into this like a nervous wreck because for those who don't know, I struggle a lot with social anxiety, and having one-on-one calls even with people I know is very difficult for me. And it's been kind of like exposure therapy because I need to come across professional and like I have my shit together, because it's very important to me, especially with a subject that is so personal as queerness. I want the guests to
Mhm.
feel safe and taken care of, and not like I'm some clown trying to just like willy nilly this without like an ounce of respect for them as a human being.
Mhm.
Um, so it's been a lot of me hanging up the call afterwards and being so sweaty that I think I can wring my clothes, and also feeling slightly euphoric that I've like another one. I've done another one. I survived another one.
Mhm. No, and it makes perfect sense because it combines so many of like your interests and passions of like you're so passionate about like audio and spoken word stuff, like the sheer hours of audiobooks that you've consumed and your focus on like the quality of things, and then you are also like a very curious person. Like you are somebody who is ready to learn. So I think this is a great medium for you.
Yeah, I was thinking about it earlier today that it truly is the arena, because I always jokingly say that I hate humans. It's like it's a very evil thing to say, but
Yeah.
I think it's my way of saying that people scare me. And when I say I hate humans,
Mhm.
it's you know what people I'm referring to. It's
Yeah.
the less fortunate souls out there with some incredibly narrow worldviews. Uh,
Mhm.
but I also love people. I
Mhm.
love how different we are and the different perspectives and voices that we bring, and it always makes me grow listening to someone else talk about their life or their passion or like their experience in general. It's never, it feels like a jar that will never be full for me,
Mhm.
because human nature is inherently very fascinating to me. And in a podcast format, like for example, I've done this month, I get to learn so much within a topic that I already really love.
Yeah. Oh, that feels like the perfect cap on on this project of yours. Oh, man. It's like fucking happy Pride, and I'm super proud that you've put this together. Like this has been a great work.
Thank you. And thank you so much for wanting to like do the weird role reversal at the very end. It now I'm like I almost want to send all my guests an apology letter for like, man, did I make you so sweaty by outing yourself?
I'll just speak for myself. No, I had a lot of fun.
Okay, well, I'm glad. And happy
So
Pride to you too, of course.
thank you. Yeah.
All right, I guess I'll catch you on the flip side.
I'll catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Alrighty, everyone. That's it. That's the last episode for now. I don't know. I honestly don't know how much further I can take a format like this without it becoming repetitive. But it's definitely been a lovely thing to dip my toes, my very, very humble toes into and flail around. And on that journey, be joined by so many incredible voices from all over. So I want to extend a thanks to everyone who joined me, both listening, but most importantly, the guests. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for trusting me with this. Yeah, thank you so much. With that, though, happy Pride, everyone. Take care of yourself, love one another, and I'll see you around. Bye.